Hi everyone. So in this tutorial, we will look at how we can insert data into the database. So you'll remember from the previous tutorial that we created a small little backdoor to our database, um, where we're simply going to look at the results inside. It's time, I think, that we use the register function to insert a user. By the way, if you're not up to date, I've got lesson 6, inserting data into the database. Again, that's a branch inside my GitHub, and the repository is Flask basic template. Right, so we're going to go to the register function, and where we were in the last lesson was we had if request method is equal to post. We're going to get all the data from the register form, and then we're just checking to see if the password matches the password confirm. Um, if it doesn't, we're going to move on. So before we actually register a new user, we do need to ensure that that user doesn't already exist in the database. So as we looked at last lesson, we can use a view query to actually select the results of the users, and we'll look to see if there's a user with exactly the same email address. So to do that, again, I'm going to go results is equal to database dot view query. And view query is just a function that I have in my own little helper file. And it simply it'll open a connection to the database and run a select query for me. So I'm going to select all from users, where. In this case here, I'm going to feed in a value. So I'm going to say where email is equal to question mark. And part of the tuple of values to fill in the question marks. So what I mean by that is a tuple is like a list, and you would actually have values separated by commas. That's what a tuple is. Because we've only got one value that we're searching for, or at least one question mark, I'm going to replace that with the variable email. So that variable email is going to get inserted into this query where the question mark is. It's actually important because I'm using a tuple and it's meant to include more than one value. It's very important that you put a comma there. Otherwise, the tuple won't work. Right, and then I've got results. To test if there are results, I can go if results. So if there are results, I know that there is a user. So I'm going to type in message is equal to error. User already exists. Else, at this point here, I'm ready to insert data into my database. So I'm going to run an insert query. And as I was saying in the previous lesson, I have two functions that I can use in terms of my database, in my database interface file. The second function is a modify query, which can be used for an update, delete, or insert. So here, I'm going to insert into users. And I need to choose the columns that I'm going to insert. So I'm going to insert in the first. Now, this is where I've been slightly inconsistent. In my database, I have got a field called first name and a field called last name. They're not F name. So what I'll do is, just to make it consistent, I'm going to say here, insert into first name, last name, email, and password. What you might like to do at this point is also test to see if the password is over 8 characters long, uses a mix of lowercase and uppercase, and so on and so on. So you can always do checks on their password and provide a strong password policy. But at this point, you're only a student, so it's not something I expect at the moment. Right. So insert into users, first name, last name, email, password, values, and I'm just going to use word wrap on my view so I can keep typing. Values, and the values are going to be a question mark, a question mark, a question mark, and a question mark. So just to see that there, you essentially, because I'm inserting in four values here, I need to have four question marks. And then I'm going to use a tuple again and put in those four values. And just so I'm consistent, I'm actually going to type and change that to a variable called first name, and I'm going to change that to a variable called last name. So I just want consistency as much as possible. And so I'm going to put in the variables. The variables have to be in exactly the same order as those question marks, which have to be in exactly the same order as the columns. So the sequencing is very, very important. And so that should insert the user into my database. What I might like to do at this point is I might actually just decide to get the results of that and log it to the log if I wanted to. Or alternatively, I can use my backdoor just to ensure that has occurred. So I'm just going to leave that at the moment. For the moment, I may just put a message here. I'm just going to say success user has been added. And I'm going to run my server. Go to localhost. And there's an error. I'm guessing there's an error because it's not running at the moment. That is unless it's just been a bit slow. Okay, it was a bit slow in loading up. Right, so I'm going to go to my register page. I'm going to just add just rubbish at the moment. I may have done this earlier, so I'm just going to change it. I'm going to click submit, and it says success users has been added. So let's just use that backdoor function to see what is in my database at the moment. Right, and you can see that a second list has been added to the users table. So as I was saying, when you query the database, you can see how I'm getting a dictionary for each row. And then you can see that I have a list of those dictionaries. Right, so it's adding users fine at the moment. Okay. Now you'll also notice that I'm not hashing the password. We will have a lesson in the next tutorial or two. We'll do a lesson where we actually start hashing passwords. But at the moment, I just wanted to show you how to insert the information into the database, and we'll move on from there. Right, so that's the register page at the moment. I'm going to stop now, and in the next lesson, we'll look at possibly the login page. Thank you very much for listening.